Hi, I'm Yichao Zhu, and I'm currently a sophomore at NYU University, and my intended major is biochemistry. And in the project, with the assistance of Professor Sotani, I gained valuable experience by participating in every step of a research paper, including the topic selection, searching of the relevant papers, brainstorming hypotheses, data analysis, and the final paper production. And regarding topic selection, Professor Sotani has conducted research on risk preference on rhesus monkey, and he introduced me the idea that studying the risk choices on mammals can help us predict human tendencies in specific scenarios. And the professor provided me with the fundamental knowledge of risk theory, especially the prospect theory and related statistical concepts. And here, I will briefly outline the observed patterns in risk choices for both humans and monkeys. And let me share the screen. Okay. And human decision making is usually influenced by several factors, including the choice outcome, the actual probability of obtaining that outcome, and the perceived probability of that outcome, which is quite subjective, and also the psychological valuation of that outcome. And firstly, one observed pattern is the risk aversion, where people are more afraid of losing than gaining. Usually, the self-evaluation of an outcome and the actual value obtained are usually unrelated. This can be seen in the graph where the y-axis represents the psychological valuation of an outcome and the x-axis represents the quantity of material actually gained or lost. And according to this modus curve, people tend to have a higher psychological valuation for the loss of $100 compared to the gain of $100 in the right side of that graph. And in summary, when in a profit state, most people exhibit risk aversion, and that can be defined as choosing a lower expected value of rewards in mathematical calculations when another choice has a risk of getting nothing. And derived from the prospect theory is a phenomenon known as the reflection effect, where most people become risk seekers when in a loss state. Their mindset can be summarized as like, I'm already at a loss, so why not take a gamble? And after incurring a loss, people become less sensitive to further losses. Therefore, most individuals tend to choose to be risk-seeking. Similarly, after obtaining some wealth, people become less sensitive to newly acquired wealth, considering it less significant compared to the initial gain. And that is much like this graph, this diminishing curve of the practical value assessment. And then some may wonder why people still buy lottery tickets when they're so afraid of losing than gaining. And that is because many individuals focus on the extremely low cost and potentially high returns while disregarding the actual probability of winning. And it's a human tendency to selectively ignore things that they don't want to acknowledge. And this aligns with the characteristic reflected in the probability weighting functions here, where people psychologically exaggerated the probabilities of highly unlikely events. And in this graph, we can see the portion of function W above the dashed line. And that part is the actual probability is quite small, but people still hold high expectations for it. And I found the topic quite fascinating. Another observed pattern is reference dependence. Many people judge gains and losses based on a reference point, and it's the point at 0. in the graph here. This reference point can be dynamic in people's mind. Like for example, individuals often perceive like I earn $700 while others earn $600. It's much better than the situation I earn $800 when others earn $900. Like in the second situation, actually, I earn more, but I earn at a smaller amount compared to others' earnings. And after knowing those fundamental knowledge, I decide to dive deeper into the relevant theory of risk choices. I choose to reanalyze the extensive dataset from rhesus monkey experiments available in Professor Suttoney's laboratory, aiming to further understand the factors influencing monkeys' risk preference. And we mainly adopt two methods to reanalyze the gathered data. Method 1 involved constructing psychometric functions based on the two sets of data. Specifically, we examine the selection of the left gamble as a function of the difference in expected value between the left and right gambles. This analysis was conducted separately for each monkey, aiming to investigate whether their sensitivity to the provided information exhibit a systematic change. And like we can see the middle graph on the screen here. Like if the two lines overlap, it indicates the factor we select does not influence the monkey's results, not have no influence on those risk preference. But if the two lines do not overlap, and the steeper the lines are, the more sensitive the monkeys are to the factors we want to investigate. And the second method is the p-test on the monkey's choices between the less risky options and risky options under different settings. This approach is mainly for us to assess monkeys' propensity for selecting risky options across various experimental conditions, like whether they will become more risk-seeking or less risk-seeking after setting the scenario. And also similarly, we can look at the red point and the blue point on the middle of the graph. Like if these 2 points overlap, it means the factor we select will not affect the monkey result. But if like the red point, the red dot is above the blue dot, and it means the points move upward and the monkey become less risk-seeking. And based on the literary review we find and all those like prospect theory, we form the hypothesis. We believe that the monkeys will become more satiated. As they become more satiated, their prioritization shifts towards larger rewards, and they will become more risk-seeking. And we also expect monkeys to show a greater inclination towards risk-taking after satisfactory outcomes, and also anticipate higher likelihood of risk-taking when the average reward is larger and the probability of gaining such reward is higher. And we first look at the impact. We first want to investigate the impact of reward history on monkeys' risk preference. Like we look at the difference after the rewarded and non-rewarded trials, and also between the choice after obtaining larger reward versus any other amount of reward, and also test the overall harvested reward on a larger time scale, like over past 5 trials, whether that will make any difference. And also test different session of the experiment, like whether the first 1/3 session will have different result than the last 1/3 session, but we do not find any significant results about the impact of reward history on the monkey's risk preference. And then we try to investigate the available options impact on the risk preference. We first test whether the overall offered rewards in a given trail will affect monkeys' risk attitudes, and it actually have huge impact. But the effects really depend on the individual preference of each monkey. Like a monkey with stronger risk-seeking behavior, they tend to be more sensitive toward the reward probability when the overall offer reward was larger. And the less risk-seeking monkeys tend to be more risk-seeking. And then we test the effect of overall reward probability. And we find when it's larger, all monkeys become less sensitive to reward probability. They don't care much about the information presented on the screen. And overall, we found stronger evidence for flexibility due to the set of options than reward history. And we find the individual preference for each monkey will really influence their choice making. Like they will adjust their behavior differently for reward magnitudes, but consistently for reward probability. And monkeys are generally very sensitive to changes in color and size of offers, indicating the two reward attributes. And when considering the difficulties and challenges encountered throughout the entire project process, in addition to the previously mentioned issue of initial hypothesis not yielding significant results, there were other challenges like the time constraints and workload from school. Usually will have conflict with my program, and I had to prioritize my on-campus assignment, and that will result in project delays. And additionally, my experience with the coding with Python was limited to the basics, and I was not very familiar with using MATLAB. And given the time constraints, it's not feasible for me to handle the coding on my own. So professor certainly helped me with that and offer detailed explanation of the coding process. I hope to deepen my understanding of data analysis in MATLAB in the future. And overall, I'm very grateful for the research insights that this project has provided me.